What up, what up? Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to another video of mine. Today I want to talk about a topic that I believe has some future in it, as far as for those of you looking to get into the driving business, the CDL in particular. I want to give you guys a little bit of some insight here that I believe is gonna change here in the future. So first I want to say happy Sunday to you all. It is Sunday. It's a good looking day today. It's actually really nice for it being October. It's nice and sunny, 60 something degrees. Anyways, so let's talk about what we're here to talk about. So I don't know if you guys have heard, but recently there was a couple of stings done, one in particular where down in the Oklahoma-Texas border, State Patrol had a sting operation for a bunch of CDL driving CDL drivers. Now, for those of you who don't know what a CDL is, it's just a commercial driver's license, which allows you to drive like the big trucks, the semis, anything over a certain amount of weight. You need a CDL to drive things like school buses, tractor trailers, reefers. It's a whole bunch of 18 wheelers pretty much. But anyways, so there was a sting operation that was done over at the Oklahoma-Texas border a few days ago now, where I believe it was over 120 drivers were arrested for obtaining their licenses illegally. So who was being targeted? Well, a lot of foreigners that come into the driver industry, the driving trucking industry. One of the easiest ways to make some good money is to drive, because it's a very demanding job. Not a lot of people have patience to be out on the road and working, long shifts and stuff, right? So what ends up happening is you get a bunch of people who are foreigners, and I'm not saying this to be rude or nothing, but they come to the country and they start to look for ways to make some money, and the easy way to do that is to obtain a CDL and just start driving a big truck. Now, the problem with that is sometimes there's a lot of ways to get your commercial driver's license, where you can do the bare minimum and just receive it without having a lot of experience. And what typically ends up happening is you have drivers out there who don't know how to back up a truck, don't know how to read signs on the highways or on the roads, because they're foreigners. They don't speak the language of English. They don't understand the signs, all that good stuff. And I know this from personal experience because I have 8 years of trucking in my past. I worked 8 years for a trucking company where I was in the warehouse, and I worked on the docks, I worked in the office, I worked, in management, and I got to see it firsthand. So what ends up happening is, back when I used to work on the docks in warehouses, right, for this trucking company, you would have a lot of these guys that would show up from all over the country, right? Over the road guys. They're called OTR, which is over the road, are the folks or the drivers that come from, out of state. You got guys that drive down from Texas to Washington, Idaho to Washington, Washington to Oregon, California, so on and so forth, right? So I used to be the guy on the dock. We call it the dock inside of a warehouse, for those of you that don't know. I used to be the guy on the dock that would receive the paperwork and go and tell these drivers that would show up, right? And tell them where to park their trucks, you know, where to put the trailers while they're waiting for a door or a spot to open on the dock. And what would happen sometimes, unfortunately, you would have some drivers who did not understand English very well, and they would be very confused. You would tell them what door, what area to go wait at, and they just would look at you confused. So they're starting to crack down on drivers who can't read or write English, and it's very unfortunate because, you know, the trucking business is already very demanding, you know, and they need drivers as is, and a lot of people just don't have the, you know, some people don't have the guts, some people don't have the patience to get behind a big truck and be responsible with a big wheeler like that, right? But anyways, so going back to when I worked on the dock, you would have these drivers that don't understand what you're saying to them, or they just didn't understand where to put their trailers. They would block areas that they weren't supposed to block, and just, you know, it was really hard to communicate with them sometimes. And I'm talking people of all backgrounds when I say this. I saw a lot of Africans, and that includes Somalis, Ethiopians, you know, Nigerians. You know, I talked to a lot of these folks, and then you know, you got a lot of Europeans, Russians, you got, you know, some Albanians, a little bit of everything, right? Asian folks, you know, some Latinos. So really, there was times where it was really hard to communicate with them, and it made it hard to do my job, to tell them, hey, go to door X or go to door X, Y, or wait right here. We'll get someone to, you know, put the door for you, you know, get the trailer for you. And then not only that, we would notice a big problem with some of these drivers. They didn't know how to back their own trailers up, and that's kind of dangerous because they would hit stuff. They would, you know, commit U-turns in the yard, right? When you're in a yard, there's certain manners in the yard that you got to follow. You don't cut off certain drivers. You don't cut in front of certain things when there's certain things happening. It's a long list of things you don't do. But what I'm gonna say is, some of these guys just didn't understand what they were doing, and I was very surprised at how they managed to get a commercial driver's license. It was very surprising to me. But really, you can go to certain schools, driver schools, pay the fees, which is, I think now currently you're looking between $7,000 to $10,000 for a license. That's what it costs, I think, about now in my area at least, to go to school, and it's 4 weeks or 5 weeks to get a CDL. But anyways, guys, they caught 120 plus illegal CDL holders in this Texas-Oklahoma border state, or border, I should say. And what they found was that these drivers, the majority of them, got their CDLs from 4 different states. Now I'm gonna name the states if I remember correctly. I just read this article yesterday, I believe. It was California, New York, Pennsylvania, and Chicago. So the majority of these illegally held CDL drivers had CDLs issued to them through those 4 states. Now, I don't know if you're very familiar with those 4 states, but let's just say that they vote, a lot of those states vote blue, and they have California especially has a history of, you know, laxing on their requirements on how to obtain certain licenses. Now, not my words, this is what I've been reading, right? So now, with all this crackdown going on, the reason for it being, I didn't even get to this part, was, I don't know if you guys saw on the news a while back, there was a foreign driver from California, I think he was, who committed an illegal U-turn somewhere on a road. I can't remember what highway he was on in what state, but he ended up taking the lives of some folks in a minivan because this driver committed an illegal U-turn on a highway and did not know any of the signs, didn't know any of the, wasn't able to communicate with the proper road signs. I'm just gonna assume that they didn't know what they were doing, or maybe they've done it a bunch of times and nothing ever happened, but you're not supposed to do a U-turn anyways, especially on a highway. But anyways, I don't know if you guys remember, the president and current administration made it a big deal, and they put it into spotlight, and a lot of people started saying, like, this isn't the first time that things like this have happened. There's a lot of people out there who are driving 18-wheelers who should not be driving 18-wheelers. And personally, myself, I can say that in my experience and my past, yes, I have noticed that there are certain folks, certain drivers out there who unfortunately are, in my opinion, should not be behind the wheels of big rig trailers like that. Now, with all of that being said, I bring this to your attention, or I bring this on my channel because we talk a lot about like driving and trucking backgrounds, and like recently I've been going through these layoff things. But with this crackdown stuff going on, these harder regulations that they're going to start doing on obtaining your CDLs, I think that in the near future here, the demand for CDL drivers is going to start going up again. And you're going to have to, go through a school, go through a program, maybe a bus driving program that'll pay for your CDL. But they're going to start putting regulations into place where drivers are going to need to know how to read and write in English. So what does that mean? It means that they're going to start filtering out a lot of people who cannot understand basic English reading and writing. Now that's unfortunate because we need people on the road. We need truckers out there to bring us our goods and everything, right? So, but I say this to you guys because if you are on the fence, or if you've been thinking about getting a CDL or going into bus driving or going into anything that requires having a commercial driver's license, I think that you have a pretty good, stable opportunity to have a job here in the near future, because regulations are going to start taking place. It's going to be a lot harder to become a driver, and therefore they're going to need people, right? You see where I'm going with this? Demand's going to be high again. They're not going to be able to hire just anybody anymore, because they got to go through all these background checks and filter out those who have to pass certain testing and basic knowledge and all of that good stuff. So guys, let me know what you think. If you are interested in having a CDL or getting a CDL, you don't know where to go, I know a few ways to obtain one, whether you have money saved up or you want to go the long route of going through a program. I can direct you in a few directions on how to obtain one. Class B's, Class A's. There's 3 different classes. There's A, B, and C. Typically, A will allow you to drive pretty much anything you want. So guys, if you're interested and you have more questions on like how to obtain a license, let me know down in the comments below, and I'll try and make a video for you guys on good places to go and obtain one. And with that being said, you guys, I hope you're having a great weekend. Enjoy it, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a good one.